morning, viewers. Welcome to Talk Up Youth. Last week, we had a session with some parents from different schools who had some burning issue about the differentiated instruction and about learning center and how does it benefit both teacher and students. Now, we have some guests with us here. We have Miss Jamelia Stanford from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, and three senior teachers for over a decade. These teachers are Beyonce Davis, Santana Simmons, and Justinia Davis. But before we go into anything, let's define what is a learning center. So we know a learning center is basically a designated area in the classroom, and it focuses on like independent and small groups where they go in and engage in a specific learning activity, whether it be math, social studies, science, or we incorporate every subject area within. Now, what we want to know is from Miss Beyonce Davis. What is the purpose of a learning center?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. The primary purpose of a learning center is to provide opportunities for differentiated instruction. And differentiated instruction is a teaching approach that adapts instruction to meet individual students' needs, ensuring that all learners have access to the same learning goals, but with different ways or content to reach their different needs.
Okay, so before I dive in the next question, I would like to share a little clip of a learning center. So, wow, as we notice the beautiful colors, the decks and the chairs, students engaging in different activity. So basically, this is what a learning center is. Okay, so Miss Davids, what is the focus of these learning center that was displayed before?
These learning center is for students to do collaborations, hands-on engagement, and basically meet each student at their level and provide them with their needs in the curriculum.
Oh, so independent learning, as you state. So this is where the students takes responsibility for their work in progress. They work at their own pace.
That's correct.
And collaboration, we know that it would be like two or more
Groups are
students
more. Mhm.
for one common goal. Okay, so with the hands-on activity now, what happened in that area?
In hands-on activities, you have students doing activities like physically making items. For example, you have students create a map of Jamaica, having them coloring it or put the physical features of the map on it.
Oh,
Those type of things.
beautiful. So what I would like to know, I'm very curious about this. How is it that the teachers, you in particular, group your students based on differentiating instruction in the classroom?
Based on differentiated instructions, you have various ways to group your students. For example, you have flexible grouping, which allows students to move from group based on the progress they have made. You have readiness grouping based on their current understanding of the content. You have interest grouping, you have humongous grouping, and you have current learning grouping.
Oh, so could you give me some information on those grouping? You said about flexible grouping. We want to know about the others.
For
What
the
are
humongous grouping, this is where the teacher sets a student, a small group. For example, students who are struggling with fraction, you put those set of students in one group to work together.
Oh, because I remember going to Michael University. I had a beautiful lecturer. She once shared a video with us with two lecturers teaching in their class, and they use like two bats and ask based on the skill that is required for those bats, and the students will select which one is best for them. Which grouping would
Yes,
that be classified as?
that would be the interest grouping.
Interest grouping. Oh,
Yes.
okay then. All right. Thank you very much. And next thing before you go, how will a learning center though support students' learning?
Okay, the Learning Center supports students' learning by understanding their readiness or where they're at. So when a teacher do a designated learning center for students, they will know where the student at, which is the present level of performance. They will establish if there are any special needs of that child, if they have any disability or anything of that sort. And they will learn their learning style, understand their preference or what the student interest is in.
And you said something very important, the diagnosis with the students, because if this child have like they are visually impaired, you'll know that you cannot show a video like
Yeah, or a visual to that student.
okay,
Yeah.
beautiful. All right, so I would want to know as well, what are the important points to remember when you're teaching your learner of various abilities?
So as I stated before, the important points of teaching your learning is their present level of performance. This is where the student is at.
Mm-hmm.
And intervention of plan or strategies. This is the strategies you will use as a teacher to meet that students at the level they are at. And the diagnosis, this is like if they have any disability like reading or, as you said before, visual impairment. And their learning style, you have students who will learn better visual, you have students who learn better using hands-on, you have students learn better hearing, and you will know the students' interests and their preference.
And the
So
thing
that
that is
is
funny,
the abilities.
the thing that is funny about it, Miss Davis, I always wonder why the schools need the students report from their previous school. Like you're entering from basic school, going into primary school, that they ask for a report. So, oh, then now I get to understand because they want to see the
They
present
know the
level.
present
Okay,
level.
thank you
Yes,
very much.
that's
Our
correct.
next question we want to ask for beautiful Justenia Davis. We want to know, what does cognitive development play in planning and teaching the learner of various disability?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So the role that it play, we have the cognitive development. It refers to students who think, reasoning, they're exploring, they're having problem solving, and we categorize this in three different levels. We have the remediation, we have the reinforcement, and we have the acceleration. As you can see on the screen, the remediation target is the lower function, where learners who need additional support with basic concepts or skills. So these students benefit from repetition, instruction, visual learners, hands-on, as what Ms. Davis was explaining before. So you have teachers, sorry, who often reteach the material so that they can grasp the understanding. We also have the reinforcement. Now, the reinforcement supports an average or medium function learners who understand basic skills, but they need further clarification or assessment in order for them to get it. So these activities can be matching activities. We have timeline, we have facts sheet, what help reinforcing content and develop confidence. We have the acceleration. This is where the students are more developed. So they are at a higher function, or it's above average learners. So these students master the core concept. These students also strive to enrich and extension activities. So we have students who think outside of the box. They know the content, they can do the work, they don't need your help, but they can work along with their peers.
Okay, so I can remember going in class and I will see like 4 different groups or 3 different groups. So I guess this is what they really group them like.
Right, right.
Oh, okay. So it's so acceleration, you will say this is for the challenging students, the one
Right.
that know the okay then. All right, beautiful. Miss Davis, I also want you to tell me, how will these characteristics help the learner though in relates to the group and the independent activity? How will it really help them? Would the
So,
students kind of relate on their peers to just do the work, or is it a case where they're really engaging in those small groups work?
okay, so we have different type of learners. So we have students who they really rely on their peers. When I was going through to school, I was the type of person who would want to be around my peers and I would learn that way. While you have some person who is the acceleration persons who they actually know the content, they know what they're doing, they don't need any group activities to understand. Once a teacher say it, they will understand what they're doing.
So is there any difference in the way boys and girls learn?
Um, per se, well, we tend to say that females grasp information more than males. Um, but it's the way how you present the information.
Okay, thank you. Miss Stanford, you are the Minister of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. I know it's a lot of workload, but based on all these teaching where you work hands-on with Miss Davis, Miss Beyonce Davis, and Miss Santana, how would we want to know the role of self-esteem as it relates to the students, self-concept, motivation, self-determination, self-efficiency, and all of that in the classroom.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Again, I'm Miss Stanford. I will be talking more about the role that self-esteem, self-concept, motivation, determination, self-efficacy play in our classroom today. Now, firstly, I would like to talk about self-esteem. So self-esteem plays a critical role in the development of the whole child. It is the belief in one's self-worth or value, and this is especially important in the classroom because it enhances the students' confidence and their desire to achieve academic success. Another key factor that we want to talk about or look at is self-concept, which refers to the overall idea of who we think we are as a person. Now, this core value, and it can be considered as a core value, is essential for students to have in a classroom because students usually rely heavily on educators to pour into them and also their peers as well as, anyone within their surrounding. So thirdly, let us look at motivation. No, motivation, if not, is one of the most important aspects of teaching and learning environment because motivation is a way for students and teachers to set limits and go beyond the limits and expectations. Once you're motivated, then you're able to excel. Self-efficacy is another important factor which refers to the judgment people make about their ability to perform a certain task. Now, in order to foster self-efficacy in the classroom, teachers will have to guide students with constant feedback and teach them specific learning strategies in order to help them perform at their best ability. So those are major roles. Those are major factors that play a critical role in the learning environment.
I would like to know though, the characteristics that help the learner. What are the characteristics that will help the learner with the group and the independent activity?
All right, so these same characteristics, self-esteem in a group, persons with students with healthy self-esteem are more likely to share ideas confidently. They believe in their ability to lead the group, and therefore they normally take on leadership roles. As it relates to individual activities, they are less likely to feel threatened by peer evaluation or any form of competition, and they're more eager to, persist, do the task, and they're always positive and take pride in their work. As it relates to motivation, however, once a person is motivated, ultimately they're going to motivate the persons around them. So to have a person that is motivated in a group, it is definitely a good quality or characteristic for any student to have because it helps to push the group beyond limitations. Individually, no. Motivation will help students to stay on task, complete their assignments, and to strive for any room of improvement. As it relates to self-efficacy, in groups, students will often take leadership roles and help their peers. Individually, however, the students will they're more likely to use effective learning strategies in order to complete a task effectively. As it relates to the self-concept, a person with self-concept in a group, they have a positive academic attitude, they support participation and cooperation. Individually, students are able to approach different subjects confidently. So self-concept has to do with confidence as well, and setting goals for yourself in order to excel.
Okay. I know I have asked a question similar to that to Miss Justina Davis, but I want to ask you based on your information that you have provided. Is there any difference in the way boys and girls learn? And if so, please to share how the teacher addressed these differences.
Okay, so I do believe, and based on research, there's enough research actually to support that boys and girls don't learn the same way. Recently there was a study to show that 75% of students in special education are diagnosed with special needs or learning disabilities, or actually males or boys. So therefore the learning it won't be the same. However, teachers have to be mindful when catering to boys, especially because of the high demand and the amount of persons who are diagnosed with this learning disability. So teachers have to set up educational ways to support boy-friendly learning environment. They will have to come up with hyperactive ways or kinesthetic things that boys learn mostly from hands-on activities. Additionally, boys are energized and motivated by movement. So teaching styles that encourage, as I said before, kinesthetic or any experiential thing, probably in a lab, any form of learning modality that support that will help the students to be engaged, the boys in particular, and more focused. Not to leave out the girls, we'd also like to look at activities that would gear towards girl and learning, because things like writing, stuff like that are more geared towards the girls, will assist them, probably like solving a weather-related puzzle. Stuff like those things are normally girl interesting, I guess. To create a skit about a water cycle, those are usually for boys. So skit, drama, stuff that they're able to be creative, is most likely more effective for the male gender.
Okay, thank you very much. One more question before you go. How should the classroom reflect consideration for learners of various disability?
All right. Thank you for that question. A classroom that reflects consideration for learners of varying abilities is one that is inclusive, it is flexible, and of course, it is very supportive. It enables every student to learn and participate at their own pace and at their own level. And that is where the differentiating comes in, because differentiating instruction may mean teaching the same material to all students using a variety of instructional strategies, or it may require the teacher to deliver lessons at varying levels of difficulty based on the ability of each student.
Okay, so basically it's based on the readiness of the students then, which level they're performing.
Well, definitely. So whatever we do while differentiating has to do with the student. So we're looking at the whole student in order to create accommodations for that student and to create a way for them to learn at their own pace and level.
Okay, thank you, Miss Stanford.
Thanks for having me.
Miss Justinia Davis, I needed to touch on the cognitive development. I know you gave me the definition, but now I want to know the theories behind the cognitive development and what they have to say about how would you suggest it is helpful to understanding the learner. Miss Davis? Miss Justinia Davis?
I'm so sorry. I thought my mic was open. So on the screen, we have two cognitive learn theories. We have the behavioral, which comes from John Watson. And John Watson really talk about how to behave into the classroom. Behavior can It can be shaped through reinforcement, so teachers can use it as a praise or reward system. So when you go to the learning corner and you try to use the things there, it would the teacher would actually help by giving you a reward. And we know that once we're getting a reward, we want to learn, right? So the behavior would their attitude towards learning corner, towards school, or towards learning would have changed. We also have structures, structures, John by Jean Piaget, and in this we noticed that Sir Piaget talk about the learning corner. It can be used to apply principle by providing students with hands-on activities. As what Miss Davis would have said, persons would learn better if they're touching, if they're seeing. Visual learners, we have kinesthetic learners. So hands-on activities will help them to understand more. And Sir Piaget speak about this. Through carefully designed tasks and connection to students, prior knowledge. So once they know and you apply the new knowledge, it will help them. So teachers help to create a meaningful learning experience where students' activity structures their understanding.
I like the fact where you touch on giving reward, because I remember when I was going through college, each course I passed, I normally get cash. And because everyone know that I love money, they used to use that. And it's
Right.
really a motivation, because at one point I saw where I was clapping peer A, because the more A's, the more the money go up. So
That's
I guess,
right.
yes. Okay then. So we'll ask Miss Beyonce Davis, what are the benefits of using performance data? Miss Beyonce Davis?
Give me a second.
Miss Stanford, could you go ahead and answer that question for me, please? Miss Davis seems that she's having technical issue.
All right. The benefits of performance data is very essential because we need, especially when students are moving to a different grade level, we definitely rely, or teachers rely heavily on their previous performance in order to create accommodations for them and to plan how it is that they're going to teach them in order for them to ascertain their full potential. We need to see their weaknesses, areas where they're strong, in order to know what to work on as we get familiar with the child.
Oh, so how the teacher normally use those performance data?
All right, so teachers would normally highlight specific subject areas or concepts where students struggle, as I said prior. They will allocate additional instructional time to critical topics. So therefore, once you see that a child is struggling in math, probably fraction, then probably you need to do some extra lessons with this child and focus more on fractions. Teachers will try to support strategic planning. This is essential because we use the performance data to plan how is it that we can best execute the lessons, differentiate, because we will have various students with various educational levels, and we need to chime in and zoom in to see how it is that we're going to bring everyone, or at least get everyone to achieve the same learning goal. So that is how teachers use the performance data in order to effectively assist the students to, achieve some academic success. Thank you.
Okay, beautiful. Miss Santana Simmons, are there any benefit of having instructional grouping? Are there any benefit, or we just group them as we feel like?
Good afternoon. Yes, there are many benefits, and research has actually shown that. Based on the benefits, it can be categorized into two groups where it benefits the learners and it benefits the teachers. So, the three ways, actually, there are more, but the three ways that we are going to focus in which it benefits the learners are increased confidence, engagement, and active participation. In regards to increased confidence, we know that once a learner confidence is increased, you know that their self-esteem is built up, and self-esteem deals with motivation. Once they have motivation, they are going to be feel comfortable with wanting to learn, and once they want to learn, it increases their desire to perform academically. Very good. Engagement. In regards to engagement, once the learners are engaged, this allows them to retain information more. So because they are engaged, you know that they will be able to remember what is it that they have learned. Also, with active participation, hands-on. Active participation deal with hands-on activity, and once hands-on activity come into play, critical thinking and creativity is going to come out, which, like we said, once you have hands-on, they are going to retain it. Now, all of those are benefits to the learners. In regards to benefit to the teachers, we have grouping, resource, and time. So grouping, this is how instructional or differentiated grouping come into play, because like my fellow teachers have stated, they are diverse learners. So there's not a one size fit all. So with the teacher, she will be able to group them so that each person's basic needs, learning style is really met. Resources, once the teacher have the resources, you know that this help her to bring in technology, which will also help the students to learn. And time management, it allows the teacher now to plan lesson plan, which will, as usual, assess diverse learners, and ensure that whatever it is that she's planning is not time consuming, but that manageable for the students and all.
So what you're saying to me now, Miss Stanford, for a teacher, I'm sorry, Miss Simmons, for a teacher for over a decade, if I should visit your classroom, these are the stuff that I will see, where the grouping and you're good with time and so forth.
Yes, yes.
The next thing I would like to share, like when I was going into primary school, like the engagement part and the exploration stage was my favorite, because this is where we really get a chance to work in our group and enjoy the lesson. And you did say something really clear, that when we are active, we tend to remember the lesson, for
Yes.
a longer time. So how should the teacher treat the issue of learners with exceptionalities? I would like to know, how do you treat it in your classroom?
No, in regards to exceptionalities, that scaffolding. So, like I was saying before, it's not a one size fits all situation. So you have to tailor whatever the instruction is. You have to tailor it to fit each child, with whether they are learning at a higher level or at a lower level. Because at the end of the day, you know that we want the content to be covered, and we want all students to learn.
Okay, so how would a teacher begin to plan for these lessons, plan for the instruction, how to put the things together to meet these needs?
All right. For starter, once you go into a classroom, the first question that you want to ask is, what do I want my students to learn? Right? After you have that conception, you're going to want to know what are the teaching and learning activities that you will do to get the students to learn. And then after that, you are going to want to think about what are you going to use to assess the children to know whether or not whatever it is that you have taught them, that they grasp.
Okay. So what I want the students to learn and what teaching and learning activity.
Method.
Oh, so this is what you'll use as a teacher in the classroom.
Yes.
What I would like to know though, what are the important steps in teaching and assessing? How do you assess your students? Explain the steps to us clearly so our parents can understand.
Okay. So the first step is to plan. And in planning, the importance of this is it sets the direction and objectives for teaching. So this is where the objective, you want to know what is it that I want to cover in my lesson. What are my objectives? At the end of the day, what do I want the students to be able to know? After which you plan your objective you are going to teach. So from your objectives come your teaching, right? After you teach, you're going to assess. Once you teach, you're going to assess to know whether or not what you have taught the students have grasped it. So after you have assessed, you collect the data in where you gather evidence to see where you fall short, what can be done to improve, what are some of the things that you're going to take out. You evaluate the data for future planning, and then you start over the process again. So from your evaluation, you know that whenever you're planning again, you're going to plan according to the data that you have acquired before.
So basically, all those information that you gathered, if the teacher reflect and see what is the downfall, then they can go back
And
again,
better.
start the process all over.
And
But what I want to know, basically, I realized that Jamaica has moved into a system where the classroom is now inclusive. I want to know, should all learners be evaluated by the same mode? Because I'm just thinking about person with disability, you know?
no, no, they should not. And research has also shown that. And like Miss Beyonce has stated, you have some learners that learn through visual, audio, kinesthetic. So like I keep saying, it's not a one size fits all. You don't put everyone in the same basket, because if you're going to do that, you're going to have learners that are going to be left behind. Because if this child is visually impaired, there's no way you can provide an assessment where it's foreseen. No, you cannot do that, because that child is not going to learn anything. And when you go to assess, there's nothing to assess, because that child would not have learned any of the content that you would have taught.
Okay, so what are the key principle of differentiation? Because I've seen where this is very important within the classroom. So I want to know the key principles.
Okay, so we have the strategy or the process, the classroom, the teacher, the product, the content. So, and this is by Joseph Resoley. So, to explain the 5 ways in which this is used. Now, the instructional, which is the process, is how exactly you're going to teach your learners. And from that, with the content, the content is where you would get the process, right? And if you're going to teach, then you need a classroom. And the classroom environment is very important in regards to teaching, because it has to be comfortable. And the teacher himself has to know what she is doing. And then you know that the product would be the final thing as to assess as to whatever it is that you taught and how well the students have grasped it.
Okay, so question, how do these principles translate to the planning and delivery of instruction?
Okay, so this I'll be reading. The following description illustrates where differentiated classrooms would look like if each 5 dimensions were implemented. The content would be adjusted and changed to meet the needs of advanced students. In reading, for example, advanced self-selected reading materials would be used to challenge talented readers, and less than challenging but high interest content would be used to engage struggling readers. So each stage, each instructional, so the differentiation would come in where A different set of planning would be for the person that is higher than the one that is reading at a lower level.
Okay, so how should the teacher ensure that objectives are developmentally appropriate?
Simple, SMART, by using the SMART objectives.
But could you go more in the SMART objective, because
All
I don't
right.
have a clue, I'm not a teacher.
Okay, so the SMART objective is that the teacher have to ensure that she provides specific goals, right? The objective should be measurable. The objective should be attainable, realistic, and time bound.
Okay. Is there anything else I need to know about the SMART objective?
Once you have this, whenever you're planning, you cannot go wrong, because you cannot have a lesson that isn't measurable, attainable, or realistic. And that's how the hands-on will come in. And time management have a lot to do with the
Okay.
SMART objective.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to take our break, and when we come back, there is a poster that will be shared on the Learning Center. Likewise, they are going to share a virtual video to show us how they will plan to set up some Learning Center for the future for the rest of primary school. And I know that these students are excited about it and all of that, so I can't wait to see it. Stay tuned.
Attention teachers! The Ministry of Education and Youth aims to facilitate a learner-centered approach to teaching and learning. Great emphasis is being placed on problem solving, which requires students to use prior skills to think critically, reflectively, and creatively, both as individuals and as members of a learning group. Visit the Ministry of Education and Youth's website to get full access to instruments for lesson planning at www.moey.gov.jn.
Welcome back, my viewers. So as promised, we have a virtual video that we're going to share of how they expect the Learning Center should look like, and a little poster of their Learning Center of what they cater for and all of that. Now, we're going to ask Miss Simmons to do the closing, as to reminding the teachers of the critical steps in being an effective teacher and creating a effective learning experience for them. Go ahead, Miss.
All right, thank you again. So the steps, as usual, you know that the first thing to note is to know your learners, their abilities, their interests, their learning styles, and their needs. Then you're going to plan with purpose. So lesson plan, grouping, learning objectives. All of those should be one. Differentiated instruction, your teaching method, and your grouping strategies. Positive environment, foster respect, cooperative learning, growth mindset. Active learning, which would include participation, collaboration, and exploration. And finally, assess and reflect. Assessment data, instructions, and reflection on teaching practices.
So there you have it, my viewers. Teachers, if you use these steps and implement it in your group strategy effectively, and it can also help to create an enriched center for your students, for learning and all of that. So now I'm going to show you two images of our two teachers, Miss Simmons and Miss Davis, of their classroom. So you see, they have the class rules and all of that. And I remember this as a child. So there you have it for the classroom. I remember this growing up, going into the classroom, that vibrant colors and so forth with the rules and so forth. Look at this. This is beautiful, don't you think? Yes, with the shapes and colors and all of that. Now we're going to focus on the posters that they have, who they cater for, and so forth. So notice on the screen, you're seeing the Learning Center. You see the date in which they operate from 7:30 to 3 o'clock. You see the address on the screen, 123 South Park. So you have the learning center where it show you the date in which they operate from Monday to Friday and time 7:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. The address 123 South Park, Kingston 20. And their learning center focus on grade 4 on the social study, the theme or national hero, and the topic honoring our national hero. So their learning center also focus on just like what they present before, the independent learner, collaboration, hands-on exploration, and differentiated instruction. Here is the video of their virtual learning center, and this is how they hope other schools will do the center. Pay attention. So there you have it. This is all that we have to say today, and I'll see you next week where we. Now there you have it. You saw with your very own eyes the virtual learning center, and I know that it will be definitely a success in the future once we have proper, planning and so forth. Yes. So next week we'll join with some different set of parents to ask them if the questions were answered and if they have anything else to share, so we know what to do and what not to do. See you next week. Thank you. Bye.